Welcome to Real Money with Lisa Chastain. Lisa Chastain is a best-selling author and money coach known for her work in money mindset and financial transformation. Her approach focuses on the truth that money is emotional before it's mathematical, and that lasting financial freedom begins with changing the way we think, feel, and behave with money. On this show, Lisa explores the psychology of wealth, abundance mindset, financial literacy, and the deeper beliefs that shape everything from debt and income to entrepreneurship, side hustles, and building multiple income streams. If you're ready to shift your relationship with money and step into a stronger wealth mindset, you're in the right place. Here's your host, Lisa Chastain. Welcome to Real Money with Lisa Chastain.
Welcome back to another episode of Real Money. I'm your host, Lisa Chastain. I'm so grateful that you're here. And today I have a real treat for you. I have my mentor, Robert Pleasance, who is joining us today. And he's pretty incredible. Recently, over the last year and a half, he and I have collaborated to build the Wealth Within training. And today you're going to hear from Robert's perspective how powerful these trainings really are and why he decided to join forces with me. But let me give you a little bit of Robert's background before we jump in. He's based in Virginia Beach, born in Atlanta. He is a Georgia State University graduate with a degree in communication. He and I both have degrees in communication. He is a teen leadership and adult leadership legacy trainer who's worked with diverse organizations nationwide. He still does that today. His certifications and facilitation experience include the National Coalition Building Institute, Georgia State Bar Association, the United Way, the Carter Way. He's known for his powerful facilitation style, a blend of empathy, humor, and accountability that leads participants into deep healing, ownership, and the journey of transformation. We're going to talk about the word transformation on this show today, what it means, what it is, what it isn't. If you're in the question in your life of what next you can do to know yourself on a deeper level, to continue your elevation, maybe you're making great money, but you still have a sense of uneasiness or your success in some way feels hollow, this episode's for you. Welcome to Real Money. Well, great to see you. We spend a lot of time together these days.
Yes, we do.
I love all of the conversations that we have. From our last conversation, you were in town last weekend, and I came home and I shared with Jimmy, I feel like I'm in some ways like that student, right? Or that, not the word that's sticking in my head right now is protege, but it's not quite that. But like you just like have given me so much over the last couple of years and shared so much with me about how the work of transformation has become, how it's evolved. And I'm just learning so much from you, Robert. So as my mentor in this conversation, I'm really grateful that you're here.
Well, it means a lot to me. You know, I said to you as we were parting ways last Saturday, and our relationship is very unique in that, you know, you may feel like a mentee, but I sort of feel like a patient. You know, a lot of times I feel like you're my therapist right now because I just find myself just gushing, and a lot of it's very personal. And so I appreciate your listening the way that you do. We actually spoke about that too. You've always been a great listener, personally for me, and I appreciate that greatly. As a student, you were great. You were right there, hanging on everything that was said, and there's nothing better than having a student in that place. And so it is absolutely. I just think this is a great time that we get to be together and do the work that we're doing. And so thank you.
Yeah, it's funny because I knew 12 years ago that I wanted to be a trainer. I didn't know what the pathway was going to be. I didn't know how to get there, but through my own work, getting certified, it was like, all right, Lisa, and you know, you heard me say this, now or never. I'm 45 years old. What am I doing? This is what I want to be doing. But I knew that there's no such thing as someone doing something on their own. I don't believe that there's no such thing as self-made. No one is truly self-made. It takes mentors. It takes community. And you and I have come in and out of the same communities. That's where I met you, was at Choice Center so long ago. I was like, all right, well, how am I going to learn how to train in front of the room? Like, where does this all begin for me? I have a concept. How do I bring it to fruition? And at the same time that I called you, you had also had a vision of how you want it to evolve with the work. Do you mind sharing that?
Well, so in my career, I've done a lot of work with adults in the area of leadership development, if you will. And about 21, 22 years ago, some people asked me to put together a leadership training teenagers. And so I've done that. And, I'll deliver 4 or 5 trainings a year, 200 or 300 students a year. But a couple of years ago, it sort of came to me that I needed to branch out and to expand and to scale that training. And so to create 3 centers around the country that would be, destinations for parents and students to come, kids, teens and parents to come and do some training for 4 or 5 days. And so my job is to put the curriculum together and to train trainers to do that and to scale it, expand it, and have it be a thing. So, that was sort of in the back of my mind. It's something it's been rolling around there, and now it's time to do something with that. And so you calling me is perfect, because I would have called you and said, hey, Lisa, you might be perfect for this too. And so we're going to get to co-facilitate the very next teen leadership training that I'm going to do in June. We're going to do that together. And so I'm very, very excited about that. I've not shared the stage a little bit in that training, but most of the time with some of the therapists that I've worked with. But in this case, this will be co-facilitation. So I'm very, very anxious and looking forward to that.
Well, what we found out in putting the Wealth Within together is that we do work well together. You never know.
I love you. I really, really just admire you and just completely blown away by all the knowledge and what I've learned from you. But I had no idea we'd sync up so well in the room. Now, in all of our conversations, it seems like we're thinking along the same lines. It's not like we have radical different opinions about how to deal with, a large group of students in a training room. But, and so I think that has something to do with it. But it's just, I was really, really really impressed with us.
High five across the country for that.
Yay!
And we were impressed with ourselves and each other, but also the students in the class gave the same feedback. Jimmy continues to tell me how well we worked together. It was so cute. If you're listening to this or watching this, Jimmy, I just love you so much. But he was like, man, I think I'm like jealous. not in like a weird way, but he said the chemistry that you and Robert have in front of the room, he's like, I don't have any other way of describing it, but then I'm just jealous. I said, well, you and I have chemistry. He's like, I know, but still.
And so there's another side of me that says, and the trick will be to keep it fresh and alive and not to rest on our laurels there.
Yeah.
We want to continue to grow ourselves. That's just a little side note between you and I.
Agreed. So I'm going to take our listeners, for those of you who are listening, watching this show, you may be familiar with Robert and me and the work of transformation. You may not. But what I've learned so much from Robert is the history of personal development and transformational work. And there's quite a history there. When I stepped into the room in 2014, it was July 2014, there was some stuff going on in my life that I knew I needed to change. And the only way to change that was to take myself on. I knew I had gotten to the end of myself, and therefore there was only so much I could do on my own. And so when I stepped into the training, and we're going to break down what the training means, for the first 4 or 5 days, I was like, this is exactly what I've needed to get beyond my own limitations and really understand and see what's going on. It's also very much a whirlwind. You're not given a lot of information going in. It's a 4 or 5 day, very intense experience. There's one trainer in the room. The rest of us are students or volunteers. And some people leave thinking, is this a cult? Like, what did I just get myself into here? And so just putting the elephant in the room, if you've been a part of these experiences or you have family members that have been a part of these experiences, everyone, I think, asks that question. And there's a lot of history for how this work came along. And you found this work in the 1970s, right?
Well, it was 1980s, but the work started in the
80s,
the early 70s. Yeah. So
yeah, take us on that journey.
So the way, and this is obviously, I'm secondhand. I've heard from all the founders, all the people from way back. I'd worked with a number of those people. And so let's go all the way back to World War II. So in World War II, basically in this country, a lot of the men went to war. And so you had carpenters and plumbers and electricians and people that did those jobs. And typically the way that you became a plumber was you started out as an apprentice, and then you were a journeyman, and then you eventually worked your way up to becoming a master plumber, electrician, handy person. Well, these men went off to war in World War II, and guess who stepped into the role of all those jobs and took them on with no real noticeable difference in productivity. And, they did a good job, and it was women. And so a group of people got together, national training laboratories, and they said, we need to study this. Here, this has been a 25-year process, and these women walked right into these roles and picked up the ball where the men left off. And so they did a lot of research into that and how how behavior and how beliefs impact, people's thoughts and people's feelings and people's activities, the choices they have available to them and the outcomes that they create and produce. And so there was a lot of sit-ins and tea groups and, some real woo-woo stuff that happened in the 60s. The flower children, they definitely adopted, this type of stuff. And the epicenter of a lot of this training work I'm actually in San Francisco this week. So it's out here in the Bay Area. There were a lot of people took some of this education and decided to make, put some processes together and put a structure together. And so there was a group called Mind Dynamics. Alexander Everett was the founder of Mind Dynamics, and he put a training together, very intensive training. And there were two people in that training that founded the two leaders of what we would call the human potential movement back in the early 70s, was Werner Erhard. He started EST. He was a student with Alexander, and then John Hanley with LifeSpring. He also was was in the Mind Dynamics trainings with Werner. And so they both decided they went in a little different direction with their companies. Werner did much more, it was much more cerebral training. And John decided to go down the, much more the relationship and the heart of the human potential movement was more that training. And so those trainings boomed through the 70s. There were 23 centers around the U.S. At LifeSpring. And I know LifeSpring basically because that's where I came from, was in that group. I came up through that organization. And so I think when I did the trainings in 1988, there were, as I said, about 23 centers in the country, and we had graduated about 500,000 participants up to that particular point. I was a professional golfer back then. So I played golf, and funny thing, I met a young woman in a nightclub, asked her out on a date, and she invited me to a guest event. Literally, we were going to go to dinner after. So I'm thinking this is some kind of, water filters or MCI calling cards. Those were a big deal back then. And every multi-level marketing group that existed, I was always invited to their events. So I figured it was another one of those. And I walked into a guest evening, and 2 hours later, I was enrolled in these trainings and had no idea this kind of education existed. Did the trainings in 1988. We had a level 1, which we call the basic training, which was really an awareness training. And then the second course was a 5-day intensive called the advanced course. And then after that was a leadership program for 90 days, where you basically learn to take everything you learned out in the world and actually apply it. And it was also an important part of leadership was learning to share the work too. So that's another valuable part of the training, if you will.
Yeah.
And so I was just sort of blown away by what was going on in the front of the room, and thought, someday I think I could do that. And it was just one of those things where it just stuck with me. Right after my leadership program, I took a position in Augusta Country Club and was sort of at the top of the food chain, if you will, in the golf business, and not happy at all. It was like, I want to be back in Atlanta. I want to learn how to do this. And so that's what I did. I just left golf and there we go.
And jumped in and you're still a golfer, but in your heart, you're a trainer.
Yep. And have been now for, so 89, from 89 to now. So that's 37 years and lots and lots of students and lots of, And so my back then you took it slowly. You learned how to get up in front of different groups of people, different size groups of people. And then, I was pretty good at it. And so they put me in a number of different national positions. And then I learned to lead different workshops and different trainings over the years. And then the family that started LifeSpring in 99, 2000, they decided that they were complete. They'd done it for long enough. And so those centers that they had basically shut down, and there were lots of individuals that just didn't want the work to stop. So they opened up their own, and they would hire myself and other trainers like me to come in and work with students like yourself. And that's kind of how that evolved and continues to evolve. North Carolina, there was a group in North Carolina that asked me to put the teen training together, 25 years ago. And so that's where that was founded. And then so we've done that training all over the world now, and it exists. I've shared this with lots of other trainers who facilitate, a very similar teen leadership training to the one that I put together. And so it goes on all over the place. I couldn't tell you the number of places that are doing it because I don't know who everybody's doing it, but I know there are.
Amazing. All right. Well, we're going to hold on. I want to transition the conversation to, that's the history of the work.
Yep.
but I really want to talk about the work because it's people who've been in the work say the work, but we need to talk about what that actually is. So someone listening could know whether or not it's for them, something that will be for them. So hold on, we're going to take a quick break and we'll come right back and talk about what the work actually is. Pause. If you're successful on paper, but still don't feel as powerful as you know you can be with money, The Wealth Within is where we change all of that. Link is in the show notes. Robert.
Yes.
I have my degree in communication. You have your degree in communication. I've been doing leadership. I have been in a number of leadership roles my entire career. I get leadership. The work, quote unquote, the work for me was my first time being in a room experientially and also in emotional intelligence. Break that down for us. What is the work?
So the way I explain it, and have for years now, is that you and I are born into a pre-existing set of beliefs. Okay, there were beliefs that existed in your family, in your culture, in your community, long before you took your first breath. Okay, but you and I both come into this world with DNA, and so we bring with us generations of descendants and some of their beliefs and some of the things that occurred for them. They're a part of us, and so we bring those beliefs with us into this life, along with the preconceived or the pre-existing set of beliefs that are out there. And so we're born into this stuff. And the minute you take your first breath, you have an idea about how men are supposed to treat men and men treat women, or women treat women and women treat men. We have beliefs about religion and beliefs about politics and beliefs about how much money is too much money and how much is not enough money and education levels, and so then life starts to happen, As we go through our lives, different events occur and we make up things about ourselves based on those events that occur in life. So we basically have this super highway, this network inside of all these beliefs. And so what we do in this work, if you will, is we shine a spotlight first and foremost on some of the underlying beliefs and the assumptions that we make or have about ourselves as we relate to the rest of the world. And we make sure that those are lined up. If they're not lined up with my heartfelt desires and vision and what I want in my life, then it's time to inspect this stuff. And we don't ever get away from it. It never goes away, some of the limitations that we may have and some of the limiting beliefs that we may have. But we learn about them so that we can say, okay, thank you. You got me here thus far, but I think it's now time to create a belief over here, or to remember that I have this belief also available to me inside. And I can utilize this to move me forward. And begin to organize my thoughts and my feelings and my attitude and the choices that I have available to me and the actions that I take and the outcomes that I have at the end of the day. That's what this is about, is really becoming aware and then doing something with your awareness. If I've got one option available to me, okay, I'm pretty powerful, but you give me 2 or 3 options in the same situation and all of a sudden I could be limitless. And so that really, when I think about the work, that's what we're talking about. There was a study done back in 2008 or 07, actually, 07, 08, when the housing market crashed and the economy blew up. And, there were a lot of corporations that had to make some really difficult decisions about who they were going to keep and who they were going to lay off in the workforce. And, here you are, senior executive with a big company, and you've hired this person with a Harvard degree, that came out of school second or third in their class, and this should be a can't miss, executive. And then you've got this person that went to, I'm going to pick on Radford University, in West Virginia. And this person, they came out barely with a 2.5 average, and all of a sudden you're looking at who am I going to keep, who am I going to let go? And you go, well, I'm going to keep the Radford person. And someone says, well, how come that? How in the world? Mm-hmm. Well, this person, they dealt with pressure differently. They empathized with the people they were managing, perhaps. They were flexible in ways that this person just wasn't. They didn't have access to some of the same knowledge, let's say, emotional knowledge, if you will. And so we all have an emotional intelligence quotient. And so the kind of work we're talking about gives us access to expanding our emotional intelligence, because whether you're 98 years old or 7 years old or 14 years old, as we've seen many times, I can expand myself emotionally very, very quickly just by becoming aware and looking at new possibilities and new options that I have available to me. And a lot of this is really about remembering. You and I talked about this on Saturday, and it's something that's really occurred to me lately is that we're born whole, we're born complete, we're born with vitality and with passion, and we're born to live this life fully. And then life starts to happen, and I start to believe my ego and start to do things that'll get acceptance and will have me fit in some way in different parts of society. And so all of a sudden, some of the light inside goes away, Inauthentic self is constantly doing its thing. And all of a sudden we come to a spot like this or training like this where we can quiet the ego, if you will, and perhaps listen to the internal spirit and remember that vitality and remember the child and remember the joy and then bring those parts of me forward.
Yeah.
So
that's
the work
key.
in my words.
That's mine. I believe that. It's less of a behavioral fix. It's not about teaching you to do anything differently in your life. It's really about beingness, and the formula, one of the only formulas that are given in any of the trainings, and I've been through pretty much all of them at this point, is be, do, have. Who you're being in the world will framework what you do and then lead into what it is that you have. But we live in a society, especially in Western culture, that says the opposite, that it's what you have that makes you who you are, and it's what you have that then dictates what you do, and then eventually you'll be happy. And what we're seeing mass level right now is that that's a lie. That's the ego.
Yeah, the marketing companies out there will tell you, have a Toyota, drive the mountain roads in California, and you'll be happy. Have a lot of money. We see this in the Wealth Within. Have a lot of money, and then you can travel and you can buy and you can live and you'll be happy. But we all know people that have lots and lots of money that are miserable. And so, that model doesn't quite work. For me, it's always been, be joyous, do what joyous people do, and have joy. It's very, very simple model. Takes a little bit of work, baby steps to get started and then get into that mindset and that routine. I personally, it's kind of, I bought in hook, line, and sinker way back and I've lived from that place for the most part. And then I've also got it as a feedback mechanism too. So if I'm off base, it's almost always I'll go back to, okay, who are you being? And based on these actions, who are you being? And is that who you want to be? Is that who you're committed to be?
Why do these trainings get such a bad rap, Robert? I have my own answer, but in your opinion, having been in the work for 35 years?
So it's a double-edged sword, the first ground rule in our trainings is non-disclosure. Don't tell people about the experiential parts of the training. Don't let them, people might want to do this themselves. And so we don't want to give away what happens in the training. But I think a lot of people misinterpret that. And so they just, when I tell my friend about this, I'm really weird about it because I don't disclose very much. It's just this great thing I did. Come do it. You know what I mean? And I think that just leaves people suspicious. For the most part, for all these years, I've been undoing that with lots of graduates of these trainings so they can actually be, honest and open and transparent with the people around them, young people also. When I go to a training like this and all of a sudden I've had this marked shift and people see something different about me, then they want to blame the thing. They want to make it about the thing. And so that itself, if there's something out there that waves a magic wand and after 5, 7, 10 days, you're completely transformed. Well, I'm going to be a little skeptical about that. I grew up in this work in Georgia and so the Southeast. And so, I used to do a lot of sitting down and talking to ministers and priests and clergy people, to make sure that, what I was saying and what we were doing matches up. And, basically, if I'd reduce all those conversations to a nutshell, all those people believe that, all those various books, all those religious, all the different religions just want you to be the best you can be. Yeah. And contribute and serve others. And so this is no different than that. Yeah. But it gets a bad rap because of that kind of stuff. It's just, I've never experienced it, but I'm pretty wide open about it. And so I'll share about my experience, what I learned and how the trainings work. And then people can make an honest decision. I think Tony Robbins helped, Tony in the early 90s, he came on TV. You couldn't sit in front of a TV set and not see an infomercial from Tony. And so, Tony did all these trainings. He grabbed a little bit of everything he did over the years. And and he put a package together that made it much more mainstream. And so today, when, people talk about trainings that they've done, I don't think it's near as weird. And, it was way woo-woo back in those days, but not so much anymore. Not so much anymore.
Yeah. There are some bad actors too.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, in the world of neuro-linguistic programming, I'm a neuro-linguistic programming trainer. I have all my certifications in neuro-linguistic programming, as do you. Not all of them, but you have through the master's level of neuro-linguistic programming. And this is a science and a technology of mindset and how people think. And also there are some bad actors that take this technology and don't use it in service and in the highest good of others. Would you say that's true?
I've heard. I've never really experienced anybody. They used to, they would call us a cult back in the 80s, and it was like, well, I've been to every trainer meeting for the last 7 or 8 years, and I don't remember anybody bringing up, okay, this is how we brainwash people. There was never a brainwashing class. I swear.
No.
I remember my dad saying, when someone asked him about the trainings, and he said, Jim, that stuff's brainwashing. And my dad goes, well, my brain needed a good washing, So
I love that.
It's kind of like I've heard about that kind of stuff in some of the different modes of education. And could I see it happening? I suppose, but boy, that's so far removed from anything I would want to do.
Same.
We're going to talk to some people later on today about, working with us in the training room. And, if I'm going to pull the curtain back, what has me, what has you, what has us be successful is our primary focus is on health. We want to make sure that people are safe with us, and we're going to look out for them physically, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. That's just what we're going to do. And that's kind of the come from, and it always has been the come from for me. And so, from that place, let's rock and roll.
Yeah, same. The word transformation is such a big word. And ultimately what I know, and we're going to take a break and then we're going to come back to this, is that if you truly desire something different in your life, whatever you're doing, whoever you're being is not getting you the results that you desire, it is not as simple as just changing your behaviors. It needs to happen at the identity level. To your point, Robert, it starts back from when we were children or ancestral, or if you believe in this in a previous life, you come in with all of this baggage that you pull into this life with, and then you're born into this family that has this belief and this operating system and this way of being. And if it's not working for you, it does require you to transform it, to change it, to be something new. I'd rather use the word transform than change, but we're going to talk about how the work itself is also transforming and what Robert and I are doing as leaders in the work today. So stay here. We'll be right back. Hey, if you're here to change your life with money, you've got to know that change happens 1 minute at a time. Let me be your daily reminder of where to focus so that you can have everything that it is that you want. 1 Minute Money Mindset. Link is in the show notes. And we're back. You had a question?
No, I was just thinking about the last statement you made.
Yeah. So I had a mentor tell me once that it's better to use the word transform over change, because change presupposes that the thing that you're changing from is still in existence. It's almost in NLP framework, it's away from motivation. I'm trying to change something that may or may not be changeable. Like I can't change a car into a horse. I can't do that. But if I wanted to, you actually have to transform the thing. And so in the work of transformation, I'm still a woman. I'm still myself. I still have certain qualities about myself. There are these great qualities about myself, but my life transformed. I went through a divorce as a result of learning what I learned in these trainings, of the baggage I had taken on, the limiting beliefs I had about myself, how I was operating in relationships. Relationships transformed. I left some relationships, which I think may be unsettling for people to hear. I had to do some deep inner work for me to discover that the woman that I saw myself as being, which is the woman that I am today, didn't exist in 2014 when I walked into the training room. I literally went through a transformation to get where I am today. That can be a buzzword of sorts, but I hope that helps the listener understand our context. Is that people get wrapped up in the content of the training, what we actually do in the training, which is all very, very safe, what we do in the training. can be somewhat uncomfortable, but it's the context of who you're being needs to be different, or you just need to remember who you are at the highest level, at the highest good, at the highest best of yourself. And we forget those things because our ego does a pretty good job of covering up some things, right? I don't exactly know where I was going with that, but I wanted to make sure I spoke into what transformation actually is.
As you're speaking, I'll piggyback on this a little bit. When I'm changing something, that which I'm changing, I'm focused on. And I'll persist it and persist it and persist it because I'm always focused on that which I'm changing. When I hear you saying transform, it's like a demarcation from whatever it was. That's sort of like the cocoon and the butterfly. The butterfly, you would never know the cocoon existed, yet it was important to get the butterfly to that point. So what I'm transforming myself to versus from is really, I think that's the focus. Where am I going?
Agreed.
Yes?
Yeah.
And for many of us, it's about not going any place as much as it's remembering remembering what's in here and using that out there as I go.
Yeah. Which is the good stuff, which is, in my opinion, it's the connected, loving, kind, genuine, fill in the blank of all the higher vibration ways of being.
Yeah.
That's who we ultimately are.
Yeah. Because my ego spends all of its time, all that chatter is it's searching out there, the outer world, for what's always been in here. It just doesn't see it. It can't get to it. We've talked about that. In our training, what we're really working with people to do is quiet the clutter, the clatter, the na-na-na-na-na, so that we create some space. And from that, there are other voices in there, my soul's in there, and it says, remember. And then all of a sudden, now I've got options. I've got no options when it's full. From a place of full, I can only react. The minute I can quiet down and create space in here, all of a sudden I have access to a whole lot of conversations, options, beliefs, directions that I just have to remember that they're in there.
That's right. That's resourcefulness. I think we're teaching people how to return to resourcefulness, that you are the source, and that it is a whole, it's not as complicated as the world makes it out to be. That is one of my favorite parts of experiences like this. For 4 days, we can pause on our life. We ask for the wealth within, which we're going to talk about next, students to spend 4 days with us, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Get your work done in the morning. Come and spend that time with us. Turn your phone off. Connect with other people. Connect with yourself. Get some feedback. And we're going to guide you through a conversation and an experience where you can take some of those layers, that ego off that you put on to armor up and protect yourself with, and remember who you are, and then get back out into the world doing work from that place instead of disempowered states like anger, confusion, overwhelm, whatever shows up for you in disempowering ways. I love that about the work. What do you love? What do you love the most about being in the training room?
It's a play, like you said. I'm on this treadmill in my life, and when I decide to do something like this, I jump off the treadmill. And what I don't realize sometimes I'm saying, or maybe I do, I walk in and I'm going to get real honest. I've really always appreciated that, is that, I get real honest, like radically honest about where I am and, what's having me do what I do the way that I do it. How do I feel about that? What are some of the thoughts rolling around in my head? And, let's really, really shine a spotlight on the stuff that I've been unwilling to look at. Let's really talk about the things that I want in my life, but I've not been willing to pay certain prices to get there. And how come I'm not willing to pay those prices? Because that's the stuff I really want to tackle. And the minute I can come to grips with that which I've just not wanted to deal with and start to experience it, to feel it, to talk about it, all of a sudden there's space that opens up and new opportunities are available to me. And so the unlimited potential in human beings it's always been the thing that's just been the most amazing to me, here. And history's strewn with, examples of human beings doing the impossible, being the impossible, acting impossibly. So, everybody has that ability. And so, we've been picking on the ego a little bit here, but it's not as much. We're not giving up our ego. It's learning how to balance. It's learning how to, we see students that kind of come in, a little sideways because, I've been putting a lot of weight and a lot of emphasis on listening to my ego and the rackets and the masks that I wear and the cover up, to be accepted and to be approved of and to fit in and all the various domains of my life. And so I feel like a fraud sometimes when I'm in that place. And so, that comes up for people in our trainings. And so, just, coming to grips with it is one thing. And then from there, I can move to another direction if I choose to and start to quiet things down. Another thing we're doing in our training that's really, really cool is we're utilizing breath work.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about Geo.
Yeah, so
go for it.
I met Geo down in South America 5 or 6 years ago, and we just kind of clicked. And I said to him when I first met him, because he actually was one of the trainers of this process that I went through down there, where we literally got in ice water for 45 seconds after he taught me how to breathe. And I thought that was really, really cool. But then I started doing more and more breath work, and we did a whole lot of work that whole week in breathing. And it was like, gosh, I've always had people breathe, but it was just basically verbal cues to make sure they were with me and we're moving to the next thing, or to breathe them through, a moment. But this was entirely different. And so I said to him, we're going to work together someday. And then when you and I spoke first, I thought, I think there's a way we can get at some of the real deep-seated stuff, the stuff that creates those real deep-seated patterns and limits. I think we can get at some of that stuff through breath work. And so we spoke to Geo and he had some experience doing this. And so, we've got a good 3 hours, and one night we got 3 hours where we really work with people through their, what they're letting go. Some of it they're completely conscious about, but a lot of the healing that goes on, a lot of the work that they're doing, the deep work that they're doing is at an unconscious level, subconscious level. And it's just, the next morning, we hear it. It's really, really powerful stuff. And so I know we're kind of bouncing around here, but that's really, to me, one of the most exciting parts of what we're doing. We're taking your expertise, the things that I've done for the last 37 years, and what Geo does, we're putting this package together. And I think it's very, very powerful. And the feedback's been fantastic. And so it's I think it's a real opportunity there. And, when we're talking about money too, money's sort of the focus, if you will, for people walking in. But you've heard me say this, how I do anything's how I do everything. And so my limits as it relates to money, the vibration, the attractiveness, it impacts every area of my life. And so if we can clean up one place, we can clean up all places. And so really powerful stuff.
Yeah. We talk a lot about intention in this specific training. And when I say this specific training, Robert and I are independent of any other center that exists in the world today, have built a training. It's called The Wealth Within. It's a 4-day experience. It exists nowhere else on the planet. He and I have crafted it specifically for high capacity individuals to come, take off the mask and do some inner work, deep inner work related to wealth. When we asked our participants in our beta training in January if the word financial breakthrough resonated with them, and they were all like, no, it's not financial breakthrough. It's that they all walked out with a better interpretation and internal representation and experience of themselves as it relates to what wealth really means for them. And that's the beauty of it. If you can slow down for a few days in a guided way by experts, myself, Robert, and Geo will take you on a journey for you to discover what wealth really means for you, not coming from ego, but from a place of genuine, authentic connection and vision for your life, who you are, who you're born to be, what your vision is for your life, and what your intention is. And you and I have been very intentional with saying we're going to build this in a way that people can get underneath the surface and then walk out cleaner and also in a healthier version of themselves as it relates to why they are creating wealth in the first place.
We're intentional beings. Before we take our first breath, we intended to be born. And so it just comes with us. It's almost like the entire, it is a packaging of you and I as human beings. And we're going to get someplace. A lot of times our intent is unconscious to you and I. And so in this particular 4 days, we bring it from the unconscious forward so that people can actually, one, understand what their intention has been and what it can be for the future. And so, it's very, very powerful in that way.
Very, very powerful. Wealth is not a number.
Nope.
Wealth
not at
is
all.
Capacity. It's emotional. It's in your nervous system. It's in decision making, and everybody's number is different. And if you're looking for that kind of room to be in your own question about what wealth really means for you, Robert and I would love to meet you in the room The next training is April 30th through May 3rd. We have another one in September, and we're rolling out next year's as well. But just so grateful for you, Robert.
And I feel the same way about you, Lisa. This is fantastic. I can't wait to see what we do moving forward.
We're doing it. We're doing it. Well, if you have any questions about the Wealth Within, go ahead and, it's in the show notes for today. If you want to learn more about Robert, you can find that on the Wealth Within website. We'd love to see you in the room. I'd love to hear from you. Let us know what resonated with you about this episode, and we'll catch you next time on Real Money. Thanks for being here.